Well, good morning, everybody. First live stream of the week. Missed yesterday. Had some things I needed to do. Some meetings started early, that kind of stuff. Nature of work. Hopefully you guys had a good Monday, though. I missed you guys. Glad to be here again for another day. Today is going to be a few good articles. Might be a little bit of a shorter live stream. I've got some tight meetings today as well. It's just one of those weeks. But I do appreciate you guys being here. Hopefully you guys got some coffee to join me, drink some coffee as we go through some of the, real estate news that's out there being talked about right now. And there's quite a few, actually. It's kind of interesting. The past few days, things have been happening. But grab your coffee, welcome in, settle in. Before we get started, though, quick little update on the World Cup. So I know... let's see. Hold on. I know some of you guys are not probably World Cup soccer fans. I mean, it's America. Sometimes we are big fans. Sometimes we're not. But just as an update, where do we stand in the World Cup? So this is the part of the show that is not part of the show. This is before I even get into the show. This is all about me, what I'm into, currently hanging out, just a little bit. Let the live stream kind of get out there and everybody kind of log on, that kind of stuff. So we hang out for just about 5 minutes or so. But what I have been talking about is the World Cup. I've been talking about soccer. I've not been a soccer fan ever until the World Cup started this year or this time around, and I've learned a lot about it. I've been enjoying it. It's been a lot of fun. So what do we have? Well, we are towards the end of the World Cup. We are towards the end. I'm sad. I've enjoyed watching these games, but today, July 14th, Tuesday. July 14th, we got France versus Spain. So you guys are logging on. We're talking about soccer. We'll get into real estate here in just a second. France versus Spain at 3 p.m. They're going to be playing at the Arlington, Texas Stadium, the AT&T Stadium. So starts at 3 o'clock. Winner of that will go on to the final game. Then tomorrow, the 15th, England versus Argentina at 3. They're playing at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. Then Saturday, July 18th, we have the semifinal. They're called the loser bracket. It sounds horrible, but it's what it is. Basically playing for third and fourth place. And then Sunday, July 19th, 3 p.m., you have the final game, the final match. And it's over. That's it. That's all we got left. So there you go, guys. There's your World Cup update. So, guys, let me tell you what we're going to be discussing today in today's show in regards to real estate and what that looks like. We're going to quickly go over mortgage rate, what that is currently sitting at. It's kind of painful a little bit. Then we're going to jump into just a conversation in regards to the new housing law. There's a new housing law that was passed. I mean, if you're in real estate at all, you've heard about this. The 21st Century Road to Housing Act was passed. Even though Trump did not sign it, he did not veto it. There's a whole political reason why he didn't do that, whatever. Everybody knew it was going to become law. No one's surprised about that. But it did pass. So we're going to talk through that. Like, we're going to read an article from Inman kind of breaking down what some of the benefits are and what to kind of expect from that. Then this is where the topic will be kind of more interesting today is RIS Media had an article that says industry briefing. HouseCanary CEO Chris Rittiger talks Google partnership. Now, if you've been on my live stream at all in the past few months, you will have heard me talk about Google entering into the real estate listing portal war in a way. And this article is going to be talking about it a little bit more because it's going to be an interview with the CEO of Chris Riddiger of HouseCanary, which is the MLS type or the brokerage type that is going to be funneling properties into Google. And so we're going to be talking about what that is and what that could actually look like for you as a real estate agent, because it's very interesting, something to highly pay attention to. And then we only have one more article after that, and we'll call it a day today. It says, Control the Controllables, 5 Things That Determine Your Success. This is an article by Inman. It's by Kyle Crawford. And it's just a good conversation to kind of end this stream with and just kind of think through as we're about mid-year now. So let's just kind of reframe our mindsets and think about what we do and how we do it and how we go about life. So with all that being said, before we get into the actual show, let's talk about interest rates. I usually will do an interest rate, just snapshot what's going on there Mondays and Thursdays, because I live stream Monday through Thursday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, and I'll, piggyback off each other. But today's Tuesday, but I didn't stream yesterday. So just so you know. So I'm going to do that today. So let me tell you what's going on with the mortgage rates. Now, I get my brief and my just daily understanding about interest rate from Mortgage News Daily. It runs sometimes a couple of days behind, but and given if you're a consumer out there, you should always shop around because banks will do certain things. This just gives us an idea of an average. So we're just going to go off of that, okay? So there's an article here too. If you want to go into a little bit more of a deep dive in this, you can go to Mortgage News Daily, and there is a mortgage rates near 1-year high article there. And it talks a little bit about why the interest rate is what it is right now. So I encourage you to go check that out, read that article. Mortgage News Daily is completely free. They also have an app you can download. I look at it every single day just to see what's going on in that side of our industry. Here is the mortgage rate currently, though. This is where it gets pretty painful. And basically right now, the 30-year fixed rate is sitting at 6.75. That's a 0.11% increase since it has been. This was last updated on July 13th. So we're a couple days ago. 15-year fixed is 6.21. Then that means your 30-year FHA is 6.25, and 30-year VA is 6.26. So it's inched up quite a bit. And there's many reasons. There's stuff going on in the bond market. There's, you still have this Iranian war that's looming. That's still not been resolved. So oil prices are going up, which ultimately affects the overall economy and all that. So anyway, it's bleak. But we do need to kind of help our consumer to keep it into perspective that, we're still relatively low if you take the average of the past 20 years. So just keep that in mind. It's just not what we want to see. Let me know in the comments your all's thoughts, because brother, my house loan is 6.75. I closed in October. There you go. Yeah. Well, at least you bought Elite. Hot dogger. At least you bought. It's funny, and if you really look at it too, you look at inflation and appreciation. Even though you might be paying a decent, interest rate at 6.75, the reality is you've actually gained some equity, and having and owning a home does give you a little bit of that ability. Hey, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that greatly. Thank you, Bobby. Good morning to you, my friend. Glad you are here, man. Let me know how the workout went this morning. But yeah, that's at least you bought. That's all I have to say. Interest rates, do stink, but you can still leverage a lot in real estate more than you can in any other kind of investment. So I still think it's a good idea. Elise says, where I live, it's a small college town and the renting is outrageous. I might as well be owning. Yeah. And that's, I'm glad you actually mentioned that, Elite Hot Dogger. That's very true. It's one of those sayings, like small town colleges, your rent is going to go up when they're in session. And yeah, owning is a lot of times better. You can control your asset. The reality is, I heard this from a guy that was in real estate, like up until he's like 84 years old. He passed away, but he's been doing it for like over 60, 70 years. And he would always say, like, no matter what, you're buying a house. You're either buying a house for yourself or you're buying it for somebody else. In other words, when you're renting, you're paying for someone else's mortgage. You're paying for someone else to own a home. So why not pay for your own? So in your scenario, makes perfect sense. If you're going to pay that much to rent, you should just own, even if the interest rate is 6.75. It just gives you more leverage. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Stacy Kelly, good morning. Always enjoy your talks. Thank you for being here, Stacy. Really do appreciate you being here, taking the time out of your day to do it. I know you're super busy, so thank you for being here. All right. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the actual show to get into the content and see what we can learn today together. Okay. Welcome to Real Estate Brief. I'm Adam. Today we're going to be cutting through the noise. We're going to get to the truth in the news, look at the data, and I'm going to give you some of my observations and where I believe you can find opportunity. So if you're ready to gain your real estate edge, let's dive into our first story. Our first story is going to be about the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. What a mouthful, right? Just like all bills are named, they always usually have this long, lengthy names. And let's just say this. Out the gate here, there is a ton of stuff inside of this housing bill. Encourage you to go to it, read it. You can, it's thousands of pages, but you can find, kind of a breakdown, some key points and things like that you kind of glean some information from. I also encourage you to take any kind of bill like this. And this is where, in my opinion, AI is great. You can upload the PDF and say, hey, can you give me the key points out of that, and let it analyze that document and then generate you some key points. And it's just a quick way to kind of get through that long, lengthy document. Because like with any bill, there is a lot of stuff in there that does not pertain to real estate. It's just what happens. And a matter of fact, that's one of the reasons that, when we talk about this bill in general, that we just need to make note of is if we went back, a couple weeks ago, the bill passed, but then Trump refused to sign. And basically let it sit, and it took 10 days for it to actually become law. Now, he could have vetoed it. He chose not to do that. But the reason why he didn't sign is it didn't have any kind of measures in there in regards to voter ID. Notice how it has nothing to do with real estate, but it has something to do with what else is in that bill. And that is typical of what happens with the politicians that are passing bills. They put a lot more stuff in there. So as a political positioning, he decided he did not want to sign it, whatever. It still passed. He didn't veto it, just more or less making a political stance on something or whatever. So they all do it. It's just the game that they have to play. Politicians play games. It's just what it is. But yeah, Bobby, I'll pause real quick. Bobby says, raining in Baton Rouge, so slept in and heading to workshop on loan agent and process. Awesome. Yeah, you guys got some rain down there. I saw that. My son is right now in Florida, so yeah, I get it. Get it. Yeah, well, maybe you get your workout in later. Who knows? But enjoy the workshop, man. Loan agent and process. A lot of agents don't pay too much attention to what's going on the underwriter and loan side. So it's really important to know that as well, so you can advise your clients better. But yeah, good job. All right. So with all that being said, let's talk about this new housing bill that's passed, because it's got a lot in it. It's got a ton of stuff in it. And I will say this too, before we get into the article, is this kind of bill addresses so many things. Like, there's a lot of stuff in it. The reality of it is most of these things that it's addressed is not going to be like this immediate impact. Like it might take 3, 4, 5 years before you see the effects of what this bill passed. So just kind of keep that in mind. It's like, you'll hear some of the media say, well, this is a big nothing burger. You'll have other ones say it's a great landmark bill, and it's just right there in between the middle of those two opinions. It's stuff that needed to be addressed. So just because it doesn't make big waves, does that mean you should address these things? Well, no, you address things as you see that need to be fixed. And the housing, there's not been a bill passed like this since the 90s. So this is the first time this large of a bill has been passed. And it's got a lot of different things in it. So as we go through the next few live streams, I'll break down a few different aspects of this so we can just kind of keep it in our minds, probably shorter segments of this live stream as we do so. But let me go ahead and jump into the article here. It says, industry cheers new housing law. Researchers have doubts. Real estate praise the new housing law. Not everyone agrees it will lower prices. And this is the thing too. Yeah, it's been floated as it's going to bring the affordability gap down, and there's some measures in there that should help with that over time. But to be honest, that there's way more in it than just addressing that issue. And that's why they chose to pass this bill. And that's why it was a bipartisan bill, overwhelmingly a bipartisan bill. It's because it's just addressing things that need to be addressed for a long time. So thanks for all the likes, guys, and comments and stuff. Thank you so much. Congress passed the biggest housing law in a generation. Not everyone agrees it will work. The 21st Century Road to Housing Act took effect at midnight Saturday without a signature from President Donald Trump, who let a 10-day constitutional deadline lapse in protest of unrelated voting legislation stalled in the Senate. Okay, He's got another bill that's trying to get passed, and he's kind of protesting. He didn't want to pass anything because he didn't get his bill passed, that kind of stuff. We talked about that. Within hours, a national trade groups spanning brokerages, lenders, and title insurers issued statements praising the bipartisan package, while housing researchers cautioned that the law may do little to lower prices in the near term. That's what I was saying. The trade groups have been working on this bill. I mean, when you look at this and you factor in the National Association of Realtors, the Builders Association, every type of trade organization has been lobbying for this bill to be passed for months, if not years. And they've been working on this bill for a very, 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 very long time. So yes, the trade groups are all in agreement that this needed to happen. And of course, yeah, when you start looking at the advocacy groups and the researchers, that kind of stuff, they start looking at it and they start seeing some things in here. It's like, well, that's really not going to do much. And that's probably very true. It's not going to do drastic things. We talked about that. It's going to be more of a slow trickle. But there are issues in the housing industry that have been needing to be addressed for a very long time. So we got to look at it at both angles here. Trade groups frame it as a supply win. National Association of Realtors Executive Vice President and Chief Advocacy Officer Shannon McGahn credited nearly 2 years of advocacy for the law's passage. She says this, in a quote, "On behalf of more than 1.4 million realtors, we thank the members of Congress and the administration who came together to advance legislation that will benefit families and communities in every congressional district and zip code across the country." McGahn said in a statement Saturday, "This law combines nearly 50 carefully negotiated measures to increase housing supply, improve affordability, expand access to homeownership, strengthen housing finance, and support veterans." So she, in that one statement, mentioned a lot of what is in this bill. I mean, just a lot. She covered kind of the whole gambit. And that's why it's being heralded as a very good, large reform and bill, because there's so much being addressed in it. U.S. Chamber of Commerce Executive Vice President, Chief Policy Officer, and Head of Strategic Advocacy, Neil Bradley, pointed to supply as the law's central benefit. The 21st Century Road to Housing Act will help unlock the housing production America needs, Bradley said in a statement. Quote, "More homes mean greater workforce mobility, stronger local economies, and expanded access to opportunities for working families across the country." And then we have another quote here from a brokerage. RE/MAX President and Chief Growth Officer Chris Lim struck a similar note with a caveat. Quote, "Homeownership remains a goal for millions of Americans, but there have been too few homes available. This legislation recognizes that increasing housing supply is a critical part of the solution. While there is still work ahead, giving communities more tools to encourage development is a meaningful first step toward a more balanced market that will help buyers compete and support long-term ownership growth." That's a very realist opinion, right? That is exactly right. Things need to be addressed. This bill does that. Bipartisan support, and it's something that's going to help us long-term. Great quote. We talked about title insurers welcoming the law with a warning. So again, this is now the title insurers of the world, and the association say this. American Land Title Association CEO Chris Morton thanked the bill's lead negotiators by name, names all of them. He said, now the quote is this: "The title insurance industry is integral to these conversations because fraud is unaffordable," Morton said. "For most Americans, a home is the largest financial investment they will ever make. Title professionals work every day to identify and prevent fraud before a real estate transaction is completed and to provide lasting protection from homeowners and their property rights. As policymakers work to make housing more affordable, it is critical that we also preserve the safeguards that protect families from losing what they work so hard to achieve." This is why this is being heralded so well, is you have every single one of these trade organizations coming together to say, look, this thing is addressing a lot of things that need to be addressed. And that's why it's such a big deal. Housing groups turn to the rulemaking fight. President and CEO David Dworkin of the National Housing Conference, a housing coalition dedicated to developing equitable housing solutions, welcomed the law's passage, but said its value depends on the agencies now writing regulation to implement it. This is where the push is going to come back just a little bit. Okay, we got this law now. We got this all passed. But now what does the regulations look like to be able to roll out the initiatives of this bill? So this is where it's going to get a little bit hairy, and this is why it's going to take us a little bit of time to see the effects of this because it's going to take time to get through all the regulations of all these different changes. Realizing that most of the changes are kind of significant for a lot of different organizations inside of the government, and that will take legislation to get it to pass. Quote, this legislation will only be as effective as its implementation. Regulations must be written that ensures the bill's promise becomes reality. So there's a lot to get through when you make a statement like that, when you got to get through the government, right? Now, researchers question how much it will actually help. Not every reaction was celebratory. Writing in Barron's American Enterprise Institute Housing Center co-director Ed Pinto and research fellow Arthur Gales argued that the new law, quote, won't help you buy a home, pointing instead to state and local zoning changes as the more likely source of price relief. Okay, so, and this is, if I'll pause just for a second here, one of the biggest tensions inside of this bill in general was in regards to where it starts talking about zoning changes, like allowing deregulation of zoning to be easier and less red tape. And even though the federal government can make it easier to dezone, zoning is still left up to the local municipalities, cities, counties, and states. So even though the red tape has been removed on the federal side, there's a little bit still needs to be done on that side of things. And let's not also miss this, but zoning is important. If you're in an area where there is not zoning, you can understand why. There's certain areas you might have a house here and then a property pops up here that's a commercial building, right? So there's no differentiation between what can be built and where. So zoning does intend to help, developing cities to control what is happening where, and then overall help the growth kind of stay sustainable and keep people moving in because they feel like when I buy a certain property in a certain location, it's going to stay relevant for my use case. So zoning does help. But then the flip side to that is sometimes can become so regulated and so compartmentalized that it's hard to get anything to pass. And we're seeing this kind of happen when you start talking about like old malls or old abandoned buildings that are zoned one way, but are trying to be used for maybe condos for like more residential, and then trying to cut through the red tape to get it there. So this bill is trying to do that on the federal level and then trying to encourage the local levels to address that type of zoning difficulty. But this is the point of tension. There's just a lot of that going on. Housing Wire reported that Pinto and fellow AEI researcher Tobias Peter went farther, describing the package as a mix of unrelated provisions that would set back housing supply rather than help it. So there's an opposing argument. But there always is. Anytime we have anything to do like this, it's going to be opposing arguments. What this means for agents. Okay, so now I like where this article goes. Let's put our agent hats on and say, what does this actually mean for us? How do we apply this? Where's the opportunity for us to lead in these type of changes, those type of things? The split in reaction points to two different timelines. Trade groups are framing the law as a structural win for supply, while researchers caution that any effect on prices or inventory will take years to show up in listings. Okay, I would say both are right. Okay, I think when I read through this kind of bill, it's all the key measures of it. I think they're both correct in both aspects. It's not going to do massive changes, but it's going to take time to see those changes. A few points worth having ready for client conversations. And this is where we need to be kind of aware because this bill is being talked about throughout all media. This is not just a real estate related industry specific thing. This is being talked about on every major news outlet. Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, you name it, NPR, everybody's talking about it. So you do know as real estate agents, they're going to come and ask you, hey, what does this bill mean? Most of the time, sellers tend to ask more questions like that because they're trying to decide if they want to list or if they want to sell their house. Buyers, not so much because buyers know they need a house. The seller is the one that's going to be asking a lot of questions. So when you're going into listing presentations, things like that, I would anticipate questions coming up about this bill. So that's what I'm saying. Go find the bill, use AI to kind of dissect it, see what the measures are, and be ready to engage your client in conversation when they have questions about it. Now, what does this article say to do? It says, don't promise rate or price relief. Nothing in the law touches Federal Reserve policy, and mortgage rates remain the biggest lever on affordability. Agents can frame the law as supply-side measure, not a rate fix. Okay, so when they start talking about, hey, is this going to lower interest rates? How's this going to affect my bank account? That kind of stuff. Really what they're arguing here for, and this is very true, is we're talking about the supply and demand of homes. Supply side measure, not a rate fix. And anytime you're trying to address supply and demand, especially if you're trying to incentivize homes being built and more homes on the market and affordability, that's why everybody is saying this is going to take time. You can do all these type of measures. It doesn't mean your existing homes that are being built and the homes coming on the market are going to see that effect. The future homes being built and the zoning and those kind of things are what's going to be in effect. So it takes time to see those things. So when you are having that conversation with your seller, you need to be just communicating with them. It's like, yeah, look, this is not going to see like immediate effects in the market. It's more of a long-term play on supply. And since we have such a low amount of supply, that affordability has gotten way out of whack. So this would help bring some of that down, but it's going to take time to do so. All right. And the second thing they say is local zoning still controls what gets built. And this is what we were just saying. The law expands environmental review exclusions and creates a $200 million annual grant program to reward cities that streamline permitting, but it does not preempt local zoning authority. Where and what a client can build still depend on their local city or county. So see the difference? Then we were just talking about this. We don't need to labor it too much. But when we start talking about how zoning could help, well, the federal is talking about the environmental passage. Because like if you had to, let's just say we ran into this a while ago. There was a road kind of coming through our city and it was going over some creeks. And there were some issues on the environmental side in regards to the creek and some vegetation, that kind of stuff. And you have to submit for review and get that approved by federal agencies. And that type of stuff was very, very difficult to get approved. And it wasn't that it was going to cause any harm to the environmental phase. It was just that it required it to go through that process. Even if it wasn't going to cause any harm, it still had to go through the process. So they've streamlined that a little bit. So there's also like they're giving money to cities as a reward to rewrite some of their zoning, to revisit their zoning, to give them some money in their cities to kind of help develop that city. So there's a little bit of that going on. Okay, this is another one. Institutional investor competition may ease in some metros gradually. Investors holding 350 or more single-family homes can no longer buy additional ones, with build-to-rent exceptions. Large investors hold a small share of the single-family market nationally, so the effect will likely be uneven by metro rather than immediate everywhere. So this one's a little bit, it was a little bit different than what it is now. It was really just institutional investor ban. There's been some softening in the verbiage in that. I've not read the new updated verbiage in there, but still, large institutional investors can't go in and start buying up swaths of property. There are some measures in there to stop that from happening. This has been one of those articles where people have just really honed in and said this is the most pointless thing ever. It's only going to affect 3% of the entire market, that kind of stuff. But here's the thing: is if you don't address certain things just because the percentage is small, well, then you could end up having a problem where that percentage grows later. And for those that are being affected by this, there are major metro areas where this is a massive factor. It's not a big factor if you're in like rural America, but if you go into places like Chicago and New York and LA and Miami and these type of things, this is a problem. And it does affect the overall real estate of that area. So these are conversations we still got to have. We still have to have these kind of measures in place. Now, I didn't go into specific, things about this bill. You guys can do that. I mean, there are article after article after article about what's going on with that. I even have, I'll link in the description a link to the live stream that I did where I broke down the bill. It's probably been 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was before it passed, but we went through it and just kind of talked through all the different measures. I'll link that in the description later and you guys can go back and watch that. But there's a lot in that. But I just encourage you to go read the bill. Like I said, go to AI, pull it up, throw it up in there and just see what happens. Get the key points out of it, that kind of stuff. I think it's very good for us to be informed. Our consumers that we're meeting with on an everyday basis are going to be asking these questions. They're going to be asking these questions. It's being talked about everywhere. All right. Very good. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the bill anyway. Let me know if you guys see it as just a nothing burger or is a potential, or what's your all's thoughts? Like, I want to hear them. If you disagree with it, if you don't like it, if you love it, what is your all's opinion? What is your all's opinion? All right, let's switch now to the next article here. And feel free to leave it in the comments, guys. I love engaging. So if you guys want to ask a question, I will pause and answer it. So feel free to do so. If you have confusion about anything in real estate, let me know. I'm here to answer those questions too, if need be. All right. This next article, you give you a little bit of context behind this one. I did a live stream on this one. I've done 2 or 3 of them now. If you go back to the end of last year is when it first kind of came out. It was talking about Google basically displaying listings and attaching the agent to those listings directly from the MLS. And in essence, becoming like a real estate portal. And it's very fascinating because, where's the biggest search take place? Well, it takes place on Google. Where do most people go and start their search? Oh, they start on Google, right? So who has one of the best AI models? Google. So there's a really big thing to watch here. And what's happening is HouseCanary. HouseCanary was like kind of like a brokerage type setup, but it's actually more of a technology company that does syndication in a way. And Google has partnered with HouseCanary to take MLS feeds and send it into the Google platform to be displayed in a certain way. Okay, so that just kind of gives you the idea. Well, this is gaining momentum. More and more people are starting to be more aware of this. So this article here is a talk or interview with HouseCanary CEO Chris Rittiger. And he's talking about the Google partnership and what this means. And so this is kind of a continuation of that story, but that gives you the idea. And it's not really complicated to understand this. And I've said it many times. If Google themselves gets into the listing portal war, like starts doing things like Zillow, all of the portals are probably going to be on notice a little bit because people can begin their search there. And we're already kind of seeing this natively inside of Google searches where you, instead of like just doing a simple like search, you start talking to it more and start asking questions. And we see this all the time. Two Adams in real estate this morning. 2 Adams. Is your name Adam? Oh, good morning. All right. So let's go ahead and get into this. Oh, awesome. That's great. Okay, Bobby says, it's interesting. Let's see how it plays out if it does help with cities' growth. Yeah. Well, a realtor named House, I'm assuming your name's Adam. If your name's Adam, hello, Adam. And Bobby, yes. Let's see how it plays out. So Bobby is in replying to the previous article we just discussed about the new housing bill that was passed. And yeah, time will tell. Time will tell. It's absolutely true. Okay, let's go into this article here. This is by Clarissa Garza, and it says, industry briefing, HouseCanary CEO Chris Rittiger talks Google partnerships. It says, quote, if you have the belief that the largest level of exposure will sell the house the fastest, then you want it everywhere, Rittiger said. And this is a way to get it literally everywhere because of its user base. Yep. Talking about Google, guys. Talking about Google. Let's just say user base is pretty much the entire world. Outside of a few countries that restrict search. All right, here we go. As Google pushes deeper into real estate, HouseCanary has made itself the pipeline funneling MLS listings to the top of the world's largest search engine. There it is in a nutshell. During the latest Risk Media industry briefing, Risk Media founder and CEO John Featherston sat down with HouseCanary CEO Chris Rittiger to break down the company's partnership with Google and what it means for agents, team leaders, brokerages, and the consumer they serve. Rittiger used much of the conversation to correct what he characterized as media misinterpretation of the arrangement, which he said has been years in the making. We've been working with Google for over 3 years, he said, noting that early rollouts were interpreted a little bit incorrectly. So let's see if maybe I even misunderstood. So this might be good. Guys, and just so you guys know, I don't typically will read through articles. I might skim them, but sometimes I don't even do that. I literally like find articles that just pique my interest and load them up and we talk about them. So let's see where this goes. HouseCanary, a 50-state licensed brokerage with agreements with roughly 300 MLSs, feeds participating listings into Google's local services ads, which surface at the top of mobile search. Agents and MLSs already signed on. Riddicker cited CRMLS, Bright MLS, and Colorado appear automatically with free click to contact. Brokers whose MLS hasn't joined can route listings through My State MLS, which has a national footprint. Agents can also advertise alongside listings on a pay-per-lead basis, which Riddicker estimated at $50 to $250 per opportunity. Google's a marketing company. They only want to sell marketing, he said. Now that's in it. There's a lot kind of to unpack inside of that one statement right there. So what we do know is that this company, HouseCanary, has already had multiple partnerships with some of the largest MLSs out there, right? CRMLS, Bright MLS. Bright is the second largest in the nation. And Colorado, they appear automatically. All right. And it says with a free click to contact. So basically, that MLS feed is automatically just syndicated. So when someone's doing a search in the area that those MLSs are probably in, it will pop up the actual listing with the agent's information, and it says with free click to contact. So that's a native search. That's native SEO. That's Google just doing what Google has always done. The flip side of that is there is the option, just like you would have as an option for any website or any product you're trying to promote through Google, is to pay for a pay-per-lead basis, which, basically boost or build an ad on Google to display your property as more of a featured type property. And he's making the statement, it's $50 to $250, depending on how many probably leads and how much views you get, that kind of stuff. And his next point here is actually absolutely true. Google's a marketing company. They only want to sell marketing. So if you misconstrue this and say Google is entering into the portal wars, that's not exactly a true statement. Now, Google as a company is allowing this to happen, which would put them directly in competition with the portal wars, but not Google themselves. More than likely, it's more HouseCanary that's actually doing that than anybody. But still, all that being said, it's something to note here that Google, in some ways, is entering the portal war and giving us the ability to syndicate our listings to a massive audience and bypassing other portals. And if this becomes more embedded in search, that could drastically change things. It says, Riddicker stressed that the listing data is walled off from Google's AI, so it will not be sending. And this is one of the things I probably got a little bit construed, is I was under the understanding that the listings were going and that AI would be grab that information and it would start showing up in AI search results under Gemini. He's making a statement that that's not true. But things can change, guys, and we'll just see what happens. Here's the quote: the real estate data that we're working with Google on to display is not accessible through Gemini or any large language model. He said, adding that HouseCanary is contractually not allowing it to go into the large language model for training purposes. Okay, so it's not allowed to do it. That's part of the agreement, apparently. Featherston pointed to an estimated 16 billion Google searches per day, roughly 3.2 billion of them local. 16 billion searches a day, echoed calling the number worth pausing on. Yeah, guys, 16 billion. That's an amazing amount of people, guys. Amazing amount of people. He also moved to reassure agents on compensation. This is good. Quote, Google's not a licensed real estate brokerage. They do not have rights or entitlements to any commissions, describing the model as advertising and top of funnel, not a portal replacement. Let's just pause here. Google has no interest, nor why would they? They don't need to go into basically being like this Zillow lead source for you. They don't have to be like, hey, we're going to take, grab the syndication and we're going to syndicate those things out. And then we're going to give you leads and sell them back to you and all that kind of stuff like all these other portals do. They don't need to do that at all. Their model is not about, generating leads and then selling you so you can buy more ads. They're just a marketing company. That's all they are. So these listings that are being syndicated to them through the MLS are blocks of ads. It's basically, they're automatically going to be syndicated. So when people do searches for properties, my property, my name, my contact information is going to show up. But then if I want to pay to have that become an ad and be shown up in more people's searches, I can do so. So that's where Google's going to make their money. That's where they're going to make their money. On whether the setup squares with IDX rules, Rediger said HouseCanary is negotiating MLS by MLS, with some treating it as IDX compliant and others preferring custom contracts. Quote, I will stay out of the fight of what is or is not IDX, he said. So what he's basically saying is each MLS has their own compliance rules in regards to how syndication works within their feed. And he is going MLS by MLS. So he cannot speak to how this is going to work across the board because the MLS controls how syndication works. Matter of fact, one thing to note is Bright MLS. And I actually meant to bring this up. Let me see if I can find this real quick. And I'll bring this up maybe as a bunny trail at the end. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. I might bring this up here in a second. All right, let's finish this article and we'll talk about Bright MLS and kind of what they're doing. Because I just read this article too. I might add another article to our discussion, guys. But it's relevant. Asked why brokerages should share listings with Google over rival portals, Rediger kept it simple. Quote, if you have the belief that the largest level of exposure will sell the house the fastest, then you want it everywhere. And this is a way to get it literally everywhere because of its user base. Noting listings can appear on Google at no cost, a rarity. Now, this is the thing too, is this makes it a whole lot easier for like if you're an independent brokerage, if you're a big, corporate brokerage, part of a big conglomerate, it doesn't matter. See, if the MLS is put in the center of that, and then the syndication goes from the MLS straight into Google, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who has the biggest budget or who has the biggest connections or who has the best website. That syndication means that 16 billion people that are already using on a daily basis Google are going to then naturally go there when those things start popping up in their searches. They're going to start going there for looking at properties. And it could get really interesting from here. So we don't know exactly where it's going to go, but that's the truth. Now, the last statement he makes here, where he says, if you have the belief that the largest level of exposure will sell the house the fastest, then you want it everywhere. I'll piggyback this off of the ongoing conversation we're having in regards to this syndication, like off market, coming soon, and the debate between Zillow, Compass, and all that kind of stuff. Here's the thing, and this is why I agree with that statement, is that 99.9999% of agents and everybody are going to agree that mass exposure is the best option. All right, that's not hard to figure out. But at the same time, it doesn't mean there are cases where you might want to do a more strategic rollout of that property. So I think both can be true. And that's what the industry is wrestling with right now. So I would agree with that statement. I think it's very true. We all want mass exposure because we want to sell properties. Everybody wants to sell properties. The seller even wants to sell their property. So that's all true. So with that being said, I kind of made a little bit of a transition there in my statement talking about Compass and Zillow and all that. And this is why I'm going to bring up this article, because this article is talking about Bright MLS. The US's second largest MLS is going to be basically doing this. It says this. This is the headline. It says Bright MLS will let sellers suppress prices, addresses from portals. The US's second largest MLS to roll out seller-directed display suppression on fully syndicated listings. Now, this is a little bit of a switch. We've kind of made a jump now. We talked about Google and what's going on there, but look, this is all about syndication. It's all about portal wars and all this kind of stuff going on. It's a good segue here. Because right now, what we've got is a fight going on saying, I want to keep it private for a while, and then I want to give you the information. I don't want the historical data to be out there about my property because it could stigmatize my property and hurt my seller. Okay, these are all the different arguments. Here's Bright MLS. They got a little bit more creative here. They got a little more creative. So as an MLS, they're able to set the rules about what is syndicated outside of their IDX. So what are they doing? Well, they're allowing the seller to make decisions on their property, empowering the agent to be able to go to the seller and say, here are the things that we're going to be syndicating. Is there anything you want to exclude? And so this is telling you that you can suppress prices, the addresses, things like that from the listing. So that way there has to be an inquiry on that property. And if you think about it, if you think about like from the seller perspective, let's say it could be a volatile situation. Maybe it's too risky for that seller. Maybe they're a high profile seller and they want to be anonymous a little bit and they don't want their address to be shared. Bright MLS agents can decide to then present that as an option to the seller, and the seller can waive that syndication right and basically just say, no, I don't want that syndicated. So they can control what goes out and what doesn't. This is not bad. The seller owns the property and the seller should have a right to say that. Now, as an agent, we do owe it to the seller to explain the consequences for not giving all the information over. We need to make sure that they are aware that it could limit the amount of traffic that we get if we don't mass market it. So it's a whole entire conversation about that, okay? But here's the article. It says, starting this summer, sellers in the Mid-Atlantic will be able to keep their home's price, address, photos, days on market, and price history off Zillow and other search portals while the listing itself stays fully syndicated, according to a rule change made by Bright MLS. Look at that. They can decide to do what? Home's price, address, photos, days on the market, price history, all those type of things. They can decide if they want it syndicated or not. The new controls built into Bright MLS's listing entry system are the centerpiece of a rule update at the nation's second largest multiple listing service, which serves roughly 95,000 subscribers across 6 mid-Atlantic states and Washington, D.C. Until now, a Bright broker's distribution choice was essentially binary. Send the listing to consumer sites or don't. It was either or, right? The upcoming update makes that control more granular. A listing can appear on portals with individual fields flagged for non-display at the seller's direction. This gives the ability for that seller and that agent to come up with marketing plans, be strategic in how they approach things. This is a different spin on what we've been talking about, a different angle here. It's not all or nothing. There's a little bit of this give or take going on. Other rule updates focus on stopping Bright MLS members from uploading MLS data into artificial intelligence sites while adding options for those members to connect their AI tools directly with Bright MLS. All right, what's changing? The summer update formalizes a 4-tier marketing framework, and every listing, regardless of tier, must still be entered into Bright within 2 days of the listing agreement being signed. The 4 tiers. So here's how Bright is doing this. The 4 tiers. Registered, quote, registered in the MLS, no distribution anywhere, office exclusive. No Bright distribution inside or outside the MLS, though the broker may advertise it anywhere. Coming soon or active with internet. No. Shared with all MLS subscribers, withheld from consumer sites. And active with internet. Yes. Full syndication. Now with the new field suppression instructions available. So that's what they have, their 4 tiers. Registered, office exclusive, coming soon or active with internet, and then active with internet. So those are the scenarios. Starting later in 2026, homes sold as office exclusive will count toward agent and broker credit calculations, folding off MLS production into the measured record for the first time. Bright is also implementing changes that appear to strike at the heart of Zillow's policy that sought to restrict public marketing of real estate listings that aren't also available to the portal, a policy known as Zillow's Listing Access Standards, which has been at the center of a rolling debate in the industry, which is also where the lawsuit's going on right now between Zillow and MRED and Compass. It's all about that Zillow Listing Access Standards clause. And if you go into that whole debate, really what's going on there is basically, MRED is basically just saying, look, we'll syndicate if you remove where if our agents, part of our MLS, decide to go, office exclusive or coming soon and do it marketing that way, that you don't just ban them permanently. Because right now, if you do that, Zillow just says, no, you can't then syndicate, right? So they're just saying, quit doing that. So Bright MLS here is doing something a little bit different. It's kind of interesting. So hopefully other MLSs are paying attention to what is happening here. We cannot ignore this. This is not going away. The new way of syndication, what is controllable, off market, coming soon, all those type of things are going to be changing. It's going to change. The question is, where does it all land? We don't know yet, but we're keeping our ears open, our eyes peeled, and paying attention about what's happening. But this is Bryce doing something very interesting here. I won't go into any more of that. You can kind of see the regions there. They're all over West Virginia, Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, all those places, Washington, D.C. Like that's the area that they're into. So this article goes into more and more detail on this. We won't labor it anymore for time's sake, but you get the idea. There is all this reform kind of going on. All these MLSs are approaching it in a different way. There's lawsuits that are being levied. Zillow's got their own opinion and everybody else does. Compass has theirs as well. So there's a lot of stuff being kind of blown up. And that's the point. Is we talked about this here, guys. I mentioned it multiple times. Sometimes you've got to just create such a storm and blow things up so you can expose things that are just the way we've always done it that might not be the best way to do it anymore. So you can expose all those things and then kind of put it back into place where you get something a little bit better that serves all parties involved. And I think we're beginning to see a little bit of how that might play out. It might just be more visible than it has been. All right. Final article here, guys. We got 10 minutes. We're going to wrap this up. This one here is specifically for you agents, more of just a quick little topic here. It's titled Control the Controllables, 5 things that determine your success. It says, get really good at the controllables and stay adaptable with the rest. And I will just immediately say, like, there is two things that can happen in your real estate career. You could only focus on the things you can control and get really good at those things, or you can focus on the things that you cannot control and get completely distracted and lose business, while the ones that are focused on the things they can control will grow their business. Okay? What are the things you can't control? You can't control the interest rate. Can't do it. You can't control the bills that are passed. You can vote, you can lobby, you can do that kind of stuff, but you once they're passed, you can't do anything to control it. So what can you control? That's what you've got to keep your mindset, and that's what we're going to talk about real quick through this article. This here is written by Kyle Crawford. It says, before real estate, I managed a retail store. Some things were never mine to control. The music thumped loud enough to turn some people off before they got through the door. And every 30 minutes, our fragrance machines blasted the whole store with a scent strong enough to do the same. I could not change either one. What I could control was the experience of everyone who still walked in. Now, here's the thing. You cannot control the market whatsoever. You can't control what it does. But that point that he just made right there, he can control the experience of everyone who still walked in, is what you can do. When the media makes all kinds of comments about how bad things are, or what's going on, or interest rates are this, or we're going to have a crash, you can be the voice of reason to help the ones that you're connecting with to understand how to walk it out. And that's the point. That's the important. That is what you can control. You can control what you say, how you encourage, how you lead. Like, you can control those things. One of my old bosses used to say it plainly: control the controllables. Get really good at what you can control. Stay adaptable with the rest, and you will do great. Yeah. I mean, adapt is a key too, because like there is a lot of technology that's coming out. We're talking about AI, all this kind of stuff. You got to adapt. You got to use some of these type of things, but sometimes you can't control everything that's going on. A decade of leading agents later, I have not found better advice for this business. Here's the truth. You cannot control mortgage rates, inventory, or the headlines that scare your clients. But how much time and effort you put into the things you can control will make or break how good an agent you become, how consistent you are with your clients, and whether you can practice and adapt when the market shifts. Here are the 5 I would start with. So he's going to give you some ideas here. Look, we're going to go through these real quick, ponder them, make them part of your everyday routine, and just stay grounded in the idea of the things you can control. Pay attention. Like a lot of times, like what we talk about here is stuff we can't control. I don't come in here and say all these things in here about creating fear in you, saying, well, we're just not going to do this anymore at all. No, it's being informed so I can then better lead. I can do what I can control. I can be the truth to the lies in the media, right? I can talk about interest rates in regards to, yeah, it's expensive, like we did earlier, and then talk about the benefits of home ownership and the risk of waiting, right? I can navigate these things. Your mindset. Every market gives you a reason to panic or a reason to hide, but every market also breeds its own opportunities if you are adaptable enough to adjust your business to them. The agents who last decide on purpose to spend their energy on what they can affect instead of what they cannot. That is not a motivational poster. It is a daily choice. When you catch yourself blaming the rate environment or the market or somebody else, maybe somebody else, oh, this person always does this to me, or they just have it better than I do, or anything like that. Stop and ask what is actually within your control in that moment. There's almost always something that, and often it is an opportunity that agents who are busy panicking will miss. Number 2, how fast you get back to people. The acknowledgement is the control, not the full response. If you're looking at your phone or your watch when an email, text, or call comes in, you can acknowledge it fast. I'm not saying stop what you are doing and take every call. A quick in a meeting, can I call you back in 30 is enough. Some agents will tell me that when they are with a client, that client gets their entire focus. Fair, and that is your call too. But as a broker with hundreds of agents who all seem to have emergencies at every hour, I have learned a bit about prioritizing, and a 2-second text back goes a long way. Now, this is true in my own experience. Acknowledgement is first and foremost the most important thing you can do. If someone sends you a text or a call and they hear nothing back, they don't even know if you got the message. So that leads them to having and making a bunch of assumptions. Now, we can't not do this perfectly. So there's 2 things we got to do. One, yes, we've got to be present with the people we are currently with. If I'm in a meeting or I'm meeting with a client or whatever, and I get a bunch of calls and texts every day, all day, as you guys do, I have to sometimes pause and say, hey, look, I'm just going to tell them I'm in a meeting and I'm focused here, but I'm going to just quickly let them know that I'm in a meeting. I'll call them back. Or I'll have pre-made text that I can quickly just tap and that sends it to them. I want the other person to know that I got their message and then I will follow back up, but I'm tied up right now. That way they know that I've communicated. And that goes a long way, guys. Don't feel like this urge where you have to immediately call everybody back all day long, because then you're just lacking focus. You're just all over the place. The people you're with are not going to feel valued. So it's just about managing those type of outcomes. How well you know your contracts. Now, this is a good one. I will say, in my experience, most agents do not take the time to read their entire contract, ask questions about that contract, and know it inside and out. It is crucial. It is crucial to probably once a month get all of your contracts out on a Saturday morning and just read through them and go through the clauses, go through the verbiage, and see what it says and get very good at understanding it. This is my first 2 years, I had almost no deals. So I attended too many lender lunches and happy hours that without clients, I quickly realized I was not the target agent they wanted there. But I also spent that time in class through my brokerage and my associations. I printed the contracts out and covered them in little notes until I could explain any line naturally. No role play, no big client load requirement. So when I finally sat across from someone, I never had to fake it until I made it. That was entirely in my control, and it is in yours. And here's the thing, is if you do know your contracts inside and out, when questions come up in the deal, once you got something under contract and you know the contract and you know it inside and out, you know how to advise your client. That's why it's very important to know what it says, to know what they're signing, to be able to articulate what it says. You can control those outcomes. That is a controllable thing. You cannot control if that house inspection shows up and it's got mold everywhere and bugs and foundations are rotting, all that kind. You can't control that. But if you understand the contingency clauses in regards to inspections inside and out, and you know the rights that your client has in response to that contingency, guess what? You can control the outcome. You can control the way that goes, right? Knowing your contract is so important. Your time, we can all picture the people who stop us to talk too long. The flood of email, the last minute calls, the constant distractions. No self-help book, coach, quote, or any influencer fixes it. Until you actually sit down and use do not disturb on your phone and computer to protect your priorities, the distraction will keep winning. That is not a real estate problem. That is life, but it is controllable. Your time is absolutely controllable. If you have a certain time where you want to set aside to do lead prospecting and you block it off, then guess what? That's what you do. If you gotta follow up with emails in regards to a contract getting ready to close or anything like that, you do not do it during that time. You have set a time block. That is what you're doing at that time, right? You time block and you stay religious to that. Last week I shared kind of my ideas. I was asked the question, like a quick tip, and I showed you about time management, like doing a time audit, that kind of stuff, and what that looks like. Look, that is one of the most valuable assets you will ever do, is taking time out of your day to then go through and block off things you're going to do every single day that are important, and then treat it as if you are meeting the highest end client of your life. You don't miss that appointment, right? So you treat that time block that way. Control your time. It's the biggest moneymaker. It really, really is. Your system, and number 5, your systems and the experience they create. Without a system, every new client means starting from scratch. I'm not talking about meticulous, fully automated setups. And kudos to the agents who have that dialed in. I mean knowing exactly what you do the moment a friend refers a buyer to you. You text them and ask them, whatever. And I'll just end here to wrap this up because I'm running out of time. The reality about a system is, and this is, it takes a little bit of time, guys, but a couple things. You want to create a system so that way there is a consistency in the way you deliver your service to every single client. And it is so important to do that. So what I would do is I would go through and I would create a system for whenever I get a buyer lead, create a system for whenever I get a seller lead, create a system for every time I get a referral lead, create a system on how I prospect. You create a system all the way from each touch point, all the way to each communication, each type of marketing piece. What all does that look like? And you create that system. You can incorporate automation. You can also incorporate the actual physical calling of yourself, whatever it might be. But you create a system that is completely predictable over and over and over again. You tweak the things that do not work. You add the things that people are doing that is working, and you constantly are tweaking this thing, because here is the most important thing about this industry. And do not ever forget this, is the way you build this business is through referrals. And let me tell you how you get the most referrals. It's by being consistently in delivering the same service across all clients over and over and over again. Because if one talks about how great you are and the person that referred that person to you, and they had the exact same consistency as the one that referred them, guess what? They talk even more. They go back to the one that referred you and say, man, I had a great experience just like you did. And then that person that talks more, they get more motivated to hear about that. And then more people start talking. So the way you win referrals is consistency in the delivery of your service over and over and over again. Just continually do it the best you possibly can, tweaking it when you can, but keeping that service very consistent. You think about any kind of restaurant out there, any kind of service industry, that's the ones that have a flawless system. That's why franchises work so well. They have a perfect system in place that you can just implement. You take Chick-fil-A, for example. Their system works because they can deliver consistent food every single time quickly, right? They do it. They roll those cars through. It doesn't matter how long of a line it is. You can pull up. You're going to probably get through there in 10 to 15 minutes. Compared to like a place like McDonald's that you could get in line, there's only 3 or 4 cars and you're stuck at the window trying to wait for the guy to get your money. And the person in front of you waiting to get their food is still waiting. Like there's a broken system somewhere. So where do you want to go first? Well, if I'm in a hurry, I'm going to go to Chick-fil-A, guys. Even if the line's busy, I can get my food quick and it's going to be good. So that consistency matters. It matters. And that's what he's getting at. The systems and the experience they create. Very important. Very, very important. Awesome, guys. Great show. Hopefully you guys learned something. Hopefully it gives you guys something to use in your real estate careers and helps you guys grow your business and find success. That's my desire. I really desire to help you guys. And I also just love having a community of other agents here talking through this kind of stuff. So I love sharing and talking, all that kind of stuff. Great. Appreciate that greatly. Well, that is it. That is your real estate brief for today. If you found this helpful, please consider hitting the like button to tell YouTube you would like to see more of this type of content. Just helps your algorithm in general. And consider subscribing and following me on TikTok to join a community of real estate agents that are focused on building a business that is relationship focused first. There's always so much more. I'll see you guys tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. You guys take care and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bobby, have a blessed day too, my friend. Greatly appreciate you. Guys, take care. We'll see you.